Hi everyone, so in the last video I posted we did a bit of a general training session just seeing where we're at with our different behaviours, and I spotted that our recall could do with a bit of tidying up at the end. So what I thought I'd do is I would film our first session having a go at working on that. And so I've got my trusty Placeboard out and we'll give it a go and see how we get on. So just as a reminder, these are clips from my previous video where you can see I recall her and she comes charging back to me each time, but when she gets to me she kind of skids past me, goes around me, and it's just a little bit messy. So this is what we are trying to work on tidying up. We started the session with some circuits, and it actually took Ivy quite a while to settle down at the beginning of this session. So as you can see, she's zigzagging all over the place, nose is down, she's really not connected with me. So I'll skip forward. And this was us about 4 or 5 minutes later, where she had got it out of her system, whatever it was, and she was now connected with me, walking with me, turning the corners, stopping when I stop, and being rewarded for that. So at this stage, I felt that we were ready to begin. As I hadn't done any Placeboard work with Ivy for probably 18 months, if not more, I decided to start the session by just reintroducing her to the Placeboard and reminding her that it's a valuable place to be. She seemed to remember as she jumped straight on the board without being cued, so I gave her a string of treats at that point, and then I asked her to break, so come off. I then re-cued her to get back on the board and gave her another string of treats. So we did this a few times just to remind her that she gets good stuff when she's on the board. And I do have a video on how I introduce the Placeboard to Ivy, so if you are interested, please check that out. You can use the Placeboard for training all sorts of different behaviours, and the reason it works so well is because it gives both your dog and you a really clear focus area, which means your criteria when you're training is much more precise. So in this session, I'm using it to give Ivy a really clear focus area of where I want her to come back to when she recalls to me. So I then had a little practice cueing her onto the Placeboard from different distances and making sure she was staying on there while I was walking around, and then I felt that we were ready to begin the recall part of the training session. So we started out by doing some elastic recalls. So I throw a piece of food out. I'm still expecting Ivy to remain steady to the thrown food, which she is. I then release her using my get it cue, which gives her permission to chase after the food and go and sniff and search for it. I then wait until she has found the food, so I'm not recalling her off it as if it's a distraction. But once she's found the food, I then blow my recall whistle and expect her to come charging back to me. And I'm looking for her to come back in front of me onto the Placeboard. So we're trying to get rid of that behaviour where she's skidding past me in a little circle and she needs to target the Placeboard to return to my front. As this session is all about building value in her returning to my front, I'm then rewarding her in position with a string of treats, and then we repeated before giving her a little brain break. Then after that little break, we changed the setup and we moved on to doing some recalls out of the sit-stay position. So I pop Ivy in a sit and I walk away back to the board. I then pause for a little while, play with my hair, flap my arms about, just to make sure that she is remaining in that sit-stay before I recall her. Because what you can find is if you do too much of this, your dog can take you turning around to be a cue to come back to you. They can take you putting the whistle in your mouth to be a cue to come back to you. So I want to make sure she is definitely listening to the recall cue and nothing else, which she appeared to be. She came charging back each time onto the board, which was nice. So she got rewarded in position for that. And then after a couple of repetitions of those, we moved on and I've added in some distractions to this exercise. So I've placed her in a sit and I'm walking away, but this time I'm getting a couple of dummies out of my pocket. I turn and face her and then I blow the recall whistle, and then as she's coming towards me, I throw the dummies past her and she needs to stay on track to come back to me, which she does. She checks out those dummies and that's absolutely fine. I expect her to mark them for me. And then she gets rewarded with a treat in position and then the opportunity to retrieve one of those. We then set up another repetition, so I pop her in a sit and I go and pick up that second dummy that I'd just thrown and return to the Placeboard. I then use that dummy as a fresh distraction by throwing it out for her as if I would do for a mark. And then I'm going to blow my recall whistle and want to see her coming back to me rather than going out for that dummy, which she does. Then as she's returning, I throw another dummy over her head. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding in some different distractions to try and proof the behaviour, to make sure that when I blow that recall whistle, she's coming straight back to me, regardless of what else is going on in the environment. So that was working nicely. So I went and picked those dummies up that time. So I'm kind of mixing it up. Sometimes I'm letting her retrieve them, sometimes I'm not. It's just a nice way to help teach her that not everything that goes out is for her. And also this was a session focused on her recall, not her retrieving. So I don't want to get bogged down in that too much. So we then did a final repetition there with a tennis ball instead of a dummy. So that's a higher level distraction for Ivy because she values tennis balls much more than she does dummies. So she retrieves that nicely for me and then is rewarded with a throw of the tennis ball and the opportunity to chase after it. When I'm rewarding her with a thrown tennis ball and the opportunity to chase it, I'll always make sure to use my get it cue before I throw the item out, just so she knows that she has permission to chase in that occasion, but you don't want to do that too often because it will end up eating into your steadiness. So we did that, and then I got her to retrieve the final dummy before releasing her to go and play and have a bit of a break. As that was the end of the placeboard part of our training session, so I popped the board away. Then we set up a few more recalls from the sit-stay position, but this time without the placeboard. So whilst the placeboards are absolutely brilliant at helping to establish behaviours, you obviously need to look to fade them out at some point. So here I've removed the board and I'm testing to see if she will still recall back to my front without doing the little skid around, which she did brilliantly. So we repeated that a few more times before then calling it a day. Overall, I was really happy with how that session went. I think Ivy is clearly very capable of recalling into my front, and it's probably more of a handler issue in the fact that I get a bit sloppy with what I reward and what I don't. So I just need to keep note of that going forward. So what I'll do in future training sessions is just keep playing with the distraction levels and ramping things up with this, increasing the distances that she's recalling back to me. So she's building up more speed, which will make it a bit more challenging, and also adding in some more challenging distractions and doing it in different environments. So that is everything from us. But as always, if you have any tips, any advice or any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments below. And thanks for watching.